You live. You on.
I'm on, okay. All right, well, good morning.
Good morning.
Most of you know me as I've been involved in Unity for well over 20 years. First in the Unity of Delray Beach, and where I lived in Florida for 20 years, and then before moving back here to Springfield, where I grew up. In the intervening time, I spent over 20 years living and teaching in China. And I've had two books published in China on the I Ching and the Dai Dao Jing. I have taught in China for many years, and what I'm going to be speaking today as my alter ego, who is Kong Dan. Kong Dan was a name given to me by my friends in Shufu, which is the birthplace of Confucius, where I taught at the school of Confucius descendants, as well as the Jining University there in Shufu. I'm writing today, I'm actually conveying something that most of you here at Unity have already seen on the page on Facebook on Unity. Today, I'm coming to you as Kong Dan, a person who I have lived for many generations and many years, and as spirit. And so today, I want to begin with an opening prayer. Normally, we have a prayer at the end, which I will have as well. But I want to begin with an opening meditation to set the tone of what I have to say, even more important, what I want to convey as to the life I've lived for eternity. It's not an illusion. It's who I am, who I've always been. But let's begin by taking a deep breath and thinking about what we do in meditation. And let's begin by writing. Let the breath come in and let it go. Let the shoulders soften. Let the hands rest. Let the mind loosen its grip. There is nothing to solve in this moment. Nothing to fix. Nothing to figure out. Just breathe and presence. Feel the weight of the body supported by the chair. Feel the ground beneath your feet. Feel the quiet that begins together when we stop pushing. Let the breath settle into its own rhythm. Let the heart remember its own pace. Let the spirit within you rise to the surface. We're not trying to go anywhere. We're not trying to become anything. We're simply letting ourselves be here, fully, gently open. And from this stillness, we begin. Transcendence is not something rising above life or escaping the world. The shift is natural. And in this room, we can already feel it. And the posture that we need to receive Lao Tzu's final teachings. This is important because it's probably one of the most segues or things that define Taoism and Chinese history over 3,000 or 4,000 years. What Lao Tzu left us was beyond measure. The handout that I gave you today actually shows a beginning, which is the epilogue, chapter 81, which was the last chapter of the De Da Jing in chapter 80. What Lao Tzu was telling at that point wasn't frustration, because he had been teaching for years and years and no one would listen. People didn't have the ability to absorb what he wanted to say. And history tells us that he just decided he couldn't take it anymore. And he left. Tradition and history tells us he headed west and never returned. Many people say, and I happen to agree, that he eventually ended in Chengdu, which is my favorite city in China. I've been there a half dozen times. It's where Marco Polo saw the most beautiful women in China, and I dearly love that city. But I'm giving my talk in what might be called a meditative spoken script, which means what we did in the beginning as an opening meditation is meant to continue throughout my entire talking today. And it's as if we're trying to settle an opening into the room that allows us to go there, to set aside any doubt, to set aside if there's anything out here beyond what the words tell us to say. It's transcendence is what Lao Tzu was trying to take people to see beyond ourselves, to understand the meaning of spirit. That's why the program begins in the epilogue. Well, the handout begins in the epilogue. Because what the epilogue was and is after he finished the De Da Jing, it was a message to the world as to how each of us are to find the best of ourselves, the best of our spirit, and to speak as spirit. That is the key to everything I am. That's the key that everything I do on my foundation. If you follow me on Facebook or anywhere else, it is to try to understand what that means. That we are here to speak as spirit, eternal spirit. A lot of what we want to do is beginning to understand how to breathe together as a group. We're all, and even for those who are maybe watching or listening, back to the idea of transcendence. And what does that mean? When we think about transcendence, we have to think about it as if it's a doorway of our spirit. That's what transcendence means. It's rising above who we think we are to who we really are, and understand who that is, and to begin to go there. For me, that is the only reason we're here. But transcendence is not rising above life. It's not escaping this world. It's not becoming something other than human. Transcendence is simply seeing clearly. It's seeing through the noise of fear and urgency, through the stories the ego tells us, through the pressure to control but was never ours to control. Transcendence is the moment when spirit becomes the ground we stand on. Not something distant, not something to reach for, something already here. We know transcendence by recognition, not effort, not striving. It's the quiet clarity that appears when we stop forcing outcomes. It's the sense of being carried rather than pushing. It's the peace that comes when we release what we were never meant to hold. Transcendence is what remains when obstruction falls away and spirit becomes audible again. Okay. Now I want to try to get into what we might call the meat of the program. And I want to begin by where Lao Tzu left us. We have to understand, first of all, that his De Da Jing that I written my own version of back 25 years ago, that was published in China 6 years later, under the auspices of thoughts on becoming a sage, because you can't consider yourself a sage, is to understand the words as they come through you. When I first started writing back in 1993, that led into my writing the I Ching that was also published in China. The very first thing that came to me was, we are here now, come with us. Now, most people would say that as hyperbole, but everything I've written since then was on a journey. I never doubted the journey. I never doubted where the journey was going to take me. Everything I've ever done over the last 30 years was trying to fit my eternal spirit into what that meant. When ultimately spirit took me to Chufu, where I first went in 1999 to adopt my oldest daughter on my way to Rinpoche, and saw where I would later be teaching at the Confucius school that was founded by Confucius' descendants. I began teaching at that school in 2012. 13 years later, that I had no idea, but I was there to remind me of footsteps, my own footsteps, following Confucius, because following Lao Tzu was, again, following the footprints, in the actual footprints that Confucius walked. As I lived and walked through Chifu and later taught at the school that was founded for his descendants for 3 years, was where I taught. None of this could have been happenstance. It was my spirit, my eternal spirit, telling me the path I was to take and to go there. And that is the message of Lao Tzu this morning. That was the idea of, after he finished the 81 chapters that you have in front of you, the epilogue was to tell you, okay, now you know, what are you going to do about it? Now you know what spirit means, but how does that impact how you are going to live your life? Not to tell someone else how they are to live their life, but how you are going to tell your life. What the epilogue tells is as the sage disappears. Lao Tzu ends the De Dao Jing with a disappearance. The sage dissolves into teaching. The teaching dissolves into the way. And the way dissolves into the one who would listen. That was me and others who may want to follow. Nothing left to cling to. Nothing left to defend. Nothing left but presence. This is transcendence in its purest form. The teacher stepping aside so the way can speak directly to us. That's what the epilogue was telling us. Now moving back to verse 81, which was the verse just prior to the epilogue, what he's trying to tell us is release is freedom. That's the sense we are supposed to have here. We are free to become who we are meant and supposed to be. Now we move into Lao Tzu's final instruction. Nothing forced, nothing grasped, nothing hoarded, nothing argued, nothing withheld. This is the life of release, and release is freedom. Obstruction is simply the moment we step out of alignment. We need to understand what alignment means. When the jaw tightens, the mouth is sit, the mind insists. When we try to fix what isn't ours to fix. When we lose the quiet inner yes. Lao Tzu doesn't tell us to fight obstruction. He invites us to release it. And the moment we release, freedom appears. Not because we achieve it, because we stop resisting it. That is the essence of the final chapter of the I Ching. You have to try to visualize the life he lived 6 centuries BC. Think about that. He wrote this in the 6th century BC, before there was even something called Taoism. Taoism was the threshold that came from what Lao Tzu wrote. And it's very important if you're going to follow or have a sense of what Chinese philosophy means or the whole concept of what it is, you have to understand what that is. The final chapter was verse 81, was this verse of release of freedom. I'd like to stop there for a moment to see if from those here, if there's any comments or questions you might have. Okay, yeah, go ahead.
We don't have a mic. So my question about it is, one day we were having a conversation, Dan, and the spiritual, most of what you're saying is very similar to the spiritual journey that Donna and I are on. And part of that spiritual journey is, if it brings me to a place of not feeling good inside, I have to let it go. Just let it go. Let it go. It's not mine to fix. And we were having a conversation. So one of the things you said was, well, so you think you don't need to kind of like fix the bad things in the, you can not fix the bad things. And we, in that conversation, my perception of it was that you were saying, yes, we need to go out and, you know, fix the world and fix the bad things that are there. So I guess my question is, with that conversation, what I'm hearing you say now is, how do you take that into your life? Because it seems to me like I don't see a whole lot of peace in China. I don't. Do you see what I'm saying? I don't see a lot of peace. So I'm trying to understand how to apply that.
Okay, I'm really glad you said that, because it takes us to a place we need to go, and that is, the idea again is we have to understand what spirit is first. Second, we have to know who we are. I have a sense, after writing hundreds of thousands of words and living in China and here, is that my sadness, if I have any, is most people go through their entire lives and don't know who they are. They don't know their spirit. They don't know, and that's what Lao Tzu was saying. His ultimate frustration when he wrote this, as he spoke to kings and people in authority and trying to get them to do the right thing, is they weren't educated enough, and the people out here everywhere were not educated enough in their daily. No one really could really speak. I mean, writing and speaking didn't really exist to speak of, because this is in 6th century BC. Your people could write. Storytelling, which is who I ultimately am. I'm a storyteller. Is my role in history has always been the storytelling. But what you're saying is very true, is that, and the ultimate frustration is people don't know who they are. They don't know they are here to live as spirit. That's the underlying contradiction that the I Ching taught prior to Taoist thought, was that we are to understand the underlying contradictions that we face every day that keeps our spirit from emerging. Yeah, go ahead.
Can I say something?
No, go ahead.
I was going to say also, I don't think we have a perception really of what it is to be living in China and who the Chinese people are, either what their experiences are, because my stepson now is living there, teaching English to children, and he was really amazed at how just normal. He says all the things that I heard about what it was like to live in China and what it was like for the Chinese and how little freedom they had, and he goes, they just seem like they just do whatever they want to do, and they're just he was just amazed.
Now, I'd like to respond to that for just a moment, and then we'll get to you. Is that it doesn't matter whether people are here, whether they're in China, whether they're in any country in the world. People are the same anywhere you go. And as far as the Chinese government is concerned, as long as you don't interfere up here, you're free to live however you want down here. They want you to have a good job. They want your family to be educated. They provide free education all the way through college to anybody who wants it. None of my students, when I went out of the university, had to pay for their own education. It was paid for. They want people to be educated and to know who they are. Because if you know who you are, you can best, they will benefit the most. An educated populace takes the country where it needs to go. So what he was feeling as a teacher is precisely what I felt for 20 years. They want people to be the best they can be. They learned that the hard way. They learned that by going through the revolt, 4,000 years of history, what it meant to have an emperor who only saw themselves and not what was good for the entire country. They know. After going through Tiananmen Square, they know. Yeah, go ahead.
Just before Don, just real quick. I guess I didn't get my meaning across. I really wasn't talking about China per se, or that they were not. I'm talking about that an enlightened person. If before I'm enlightened, I am a person who is against this and against that, and trying to fix this and trying to fix that, and then I become enlightened, and now I'm against this and I'm against that, and I'm trying to fix this and I'm trying to fix that, and I guess I was trying to see how the thing you were practicing is you don't go back into I'm trying to fix this and I'm against this. I'm against nothing. I'm trying to fix nothing. I'm being my highest self, and that brings all the good. I don't have to do anything.
Yeah, go ahead, Don.
I think what Lasu was being.
You got it.
Okay. What the frustration that you're talking about is the same thing that Jesus felt, that he was presenting the principle of what he called the kingdom of God, and nobody understood. Nobody took him seriously because humankind was not evolved enough at that time to absorb the profundity of what he was talking about.
Very true.
No.
Well, and again, the essence of Lazarus and Jesus was virtue.
Yeah.
That's what we have to understand. And it comes from within each person. The story isn't to change someone else. It's to change ourselves. And that is the key that changes the world. It's not changing this person or that person or whatever. It's how we change ourselves to become the best person that we can. And that's the key. I want to continue here just for a moment before we continue. I want to get a couple more things in because I definitely want to hear the audience here. Because I want to speak a little bit going backwards to verse 80. And it talks about remaining in high style. What can that mean for ourselves? And it brings back transcendence into daily life. Simplicity. Sufficiency. Contentment. Responsibility. Living close to the earth. Not needing to chase or prove. We're not here to prove anything to anyone regarding anything. We're here to put ourselves in such a way that through our actions, others see us and say, wow, can I be like that? That's what Lao Tzu was saying, was to learn enough about ourselves so that virtue is simple and spirit, as we may understand what transcendence means, is just an extension of ourselves. And this can apply to any way of how you think yourself. If you want to be a Christian, a Buddhist, a Taoist, a Muslim, all of this is only a way to be a better person. And if your spirit is attracted to a particular path, then fine. Go there. but understand the meaning of who you are first and the meaning of spirit. And then do that. I want to talk this moment to follow up a little bit more on what verse 80 is telling us, and that is back to what it means is the grounding, that life of simplicity, and how we're supposed to live. I think that's really important to what Lao Tzu was saying. Almost everyone in this room has you received from me every now and then on Unity's Facebook page something from me. I just send it, whether you want it or not, you're going to get it. But everything I do, everything I've ever written for over 40 years was first to acknowledge who I am. You have to know who you are as spirit before you can try to influence others to do what we might think is the right thing. Oh, well, you need to do that. You need to think this. You need to follow that person over there. That's not what it's about. Transcendence of spirit is understanding your spirit has always been here. It's cosmic. I could get into a whole conversation of what the shaman told thousands of years ago around the around the fire, about how people were to look to the stars, how to look to the constellation that was there when they were born, because that's who they are. We are that constellation. We are an extension of the cosmos. And what is the cosmos always doing? What the I Ching is telling us is that it's constantly evolving. All the I Ching ever was about change. That we are in our state of becoming. And we have to change the dynamics of who we think we are when we're here in the world to who we really are. That's all the I Ching tried to tell people for thousands of years. And along came Lao Tzu, along came Chung Tzu, and along came my friend Liza. The very first thing I wrote in looking at the I Ching was telling me, this is where you need to go. You are a dragon. Now, all the dragon is a metaphor for who we are eternally. In my own way of speaking, it can be anything. But the dragon in Chinese history, for thousands of years, has been the ultimate sage. How do we become the ultimate sage? And how do we do that? Through virtue. How we treat others. How we treat ourselves. And then Confucius comes along and tells us how we are to treat our families. That's what Confucius' mainly message was the idea we are first treat ourselves as we should, then treat our families as we should. And if we do that, then our communities that we live with will automatically be an extension of the virtue of our family. That's all Confucius really did. It took 300 years for people to say, aha, that's what he meant. The most amazing thing to me is there's another person in Chinese history called Mencius, and he taught about love. That was what he'd always known for, was love. He was the one who took Confucius's words hundreds of years after Confucius lived and conveyed those words to the emperor that became the examination system in China that lasted for over 1,000 years. 1,000 years after Mencius died, in his hometown, they built what they would call a temple to Mencius. Wow. 1,000 years after he lived, they recognized who he was as an extension of what Confucius was really saying. And we should do this. We should understand virtue. We should know that virtue comes from an extension of who we are. And we need to know who we are so our best selves can help our families and the communities that we live. That's what virtue is. And it only comes when you know yourself. You live from within yourself. You don't live from out here. You live from in here. And once you know how to do that, then you learn, okay, how do I live an extension of what that means? That becomes who we are. And that's always what I found the strength of what we sit here to do every week. That's what Fillmore knew. I want to not close here, but what Emerson knew, that was the father of, who was the father of unity and the whole transformation system and transcendentalism. Emerson knew who these people were. Emerson knew about the I Ching. Emerson knew the De Dao Jing. Emerson knew Lao Tzu, and that was important. He also understood the indigenous peoples of America and that sense of nature, being tied to nature. So he could see that it wasn't just Lao Tzu and the I Ching talking about nature. He could see every day the history of this country and the indigenous population, that their whole culture was tied to living within what it meant to be in nature. And that was the genesis behind Transcendentalism. That was the genesis of what became what the Fillmores taught and became unity. That's why I cherish where we sit every Sunday, because unity teaches this. Unity teaches everything I've spoken here about virtue, about learning to be who you are meant to be when you're here. I could give a whole talk, and I've written a whole manuscript about Buddhism. I have been to Lhasa. I have been to Tibet. I've probably been to 12 Buddhist monasteries and temples in China. And it's like life is a movement. It's transcending who we are. And it's okay to be a Christian. It's okay to be a Buddhist. It's okay to be a Taoist. It's whatever it takes us to be who we are here to be as spirit. And that can only come from knowing who we are and why we're here. That's what Lao Tzu was talking about. When he was so frustrated, he couldn't stand it anymore. He said, I'm not going to do this anymore. What most of these people do is they kill advisors for giving the wrong information or things they don't follow. They just told him to get lost. Well, finally, okay, I'll leave. He left, and he left the world with this. The De Dao Jing is the second most published thing in the world after the Bible. In the world, the De Dao Jing. So when we think of influence, we have to see beyond ourselves. When we think of America and what we think who we are, we have to think of the world out there who may not agree with us, but we need to recognize Spirit. They are following Spirit, just like the comment that he was making earlier. People in China are no different than we are. I've traveled the countryside and villages throughout China for 10 years. And when I would visit, after they had seen the Daily Word, most of these villagers had been reading the Daily Word for 5 or 6 years. Some of my students I had at the university only learned English prior to getting to the university by reading Hong Dan's Daily Word. They had no idea that someday they'd go to the university and he was Hong Dan. The guy who they had been their only exposure through the Daily Word up to that point. Well, that was a trip. But that was a truism. And then they would invite me back to their village, and the whole village would know I was coming. Their teacher had written the Daily Word, and he was coming to our village. That was Hong Dan. 3 million people today in China have seen the Daily Word. People in China who in Shandong province knew who Hong Dan was. I wrote the final note.
We've got 15 minutes.
How many?
15. We started quarter
So I
after.
still have 15 minutes? Okay. When I finished teaching in Chico, the security bureau, the police, said, Dan, we don't want you to teach anymore in Chico. My students love me. But you have too much influence. You wrote the Daily Word. We know what that is. You can go to another province and teach. You can go to Chengdu or whatever, but not here. My students were crushed. I was disappointed. I thought I was home. Chifu was my home. I had been coming to Chifu for hundreds of years, not just in this current incarnation. I had been to Chifu for many, many, many years, over many generations. It's not that people have a wrong connotation of what reincarnation means. It's your spirit that is eternal. It's knowing what that means. That knows we are eternal. Our spirit is eternal. What Lao Tzu was telling us is to know what that means. We are here to live as virtue, as an extension of virtue. And when we learn how to do that, then we can learn through the traits we have how to best expand into helping the world be who it's supposed to be. Yeah, go ahead, John.
This kind of reminds me of a conversation I had on campus this week, and I will try not to identify the organization that was represented there, but we have about 16 different spiritual campus ministries in Missouri State University, and sometimes they have leaders there to talk with people, and so moving around, I'm aware of them, where they are, where they meet, have quite a bit of conversation. So this week, I happened to come by. There was a table set up with some goodies and things like that. And so I've met this leader before, and so we were just kind of reconnecting in a quiet moment, had some conversations that you normally wouldn't have publicly, okay, about what's going on behind the scenes kind of thing. And all of a sudden, this young gal came up, and this is representative of what I see on the campus with young students that are eager and anxious to find out what is the way. How do I find my place within myself? And so this gal came up basically to talk about the whole principle of prayer. What is prayer? Well, we understand prayer from what we've been discussing here in making the affirmation, the declaration of the power that's within us. So this gal came up and she was concerned about doing the right thing, and it was apparent there was a big idea of separation ideology within herself, that she wasn't enough and she didn't know how to reach God, and God was somewhere outside of herself, and she wants to do the right thing. She had a heart that is so pure. And it was interesting in that discussion how it revealed the longing that's in the hearts of this young generation to come back to these principles, because they've been told that they're separated from God. They don't have that connection to the divine. They don't know
Kind
who
of
they
speed it
are.
up a little bit. I have a lot more to say. Go ahead.
And so I think that this is a powerful topic that needs to be really focused on for today's generation that doesn't feel like they are worthy. They don't know that first thing, that I will know who I am. We had this exact conversation that we're discussing this morning. There's a real hunger for this because they've been told that they're not enough. Basically, they're lost, and basically the whole separation ideology left them hopeless because they might not get it right.
I appreciate that. That's very good. I just want to continue here as a segue to what he was saying is that cultivating ourselves while holding a marker tied to the way of heaven. Now, most of us don't have an idea what that might mean, but that is central to spirit. And what is that marker? What does that mean to cultivating ourselves by holding a marker? We each have. Every person has that marker. Every person has that spirit. It's cosmic. It didn't just happen today or yesterday or last week or whatever. It's cultivating ourselves while holding a marker tied to the way of heaven. The way of heaven. What does that mean? That means what Lao Tzu was talking about. And many afterwards, that later became the essence of what it meant to be a Taoist, what it meant to be a Confucian, what it meant to be a Buddhist. It meant holding a marker. We have, every person, spirit, we hold a marker. And it means that we learn to move through the world without forcing outcomes. That's a central theme that needs to be addressed. We are to live in such a way that our virtue, every person's virtue, is so much a part of an extension of who we are that we don't have to force outcomes. The outcomes take care of themselves because we are tied to nature. We don't understand that. It's like we have left who we are. We are an extension of what the Chinese call the 10,000 things. Nature does not exist for us to take hold of and make it something other than it is. Nature is to be an extension of what we do. That is essentially the story in a nutshell. It's like living in a quiet certainty, guided not by ambition, but by alignment. Ask ourselves, what are we aligned to? What is the spirit aligned to that defines who we are? We can't know what to do out here until we know who we are in here. That is what spirit means. Making no claims on others. and placing demands only on ourselves. We let disputes rise and fall like wind across the valley. They come only to test our direction and to reveal how far we have traveled on the path. The world looks for the sage to step forward, not with authority or command, but with the spirit of dragons, with clarity, enthusiasm, and direction. People look to the one who has accepted the mantle of the Tao, which is everyone who understands the spirit that they're here to be, who carries the lineage without claiming it. Once he accepts his place in the unfolding of things, nothing can stand in his way. He does not push, he does not strive. He simply embodies the Tao in thought, action, and deed. His steps become natural, effortless, and true. The movement of someone who has become one with the way. When I think of meditation, I laugh. I laugh. Because meditation is not something we do in the morning for 15 or 20 minutes and go about our day. Meditation is how we spend the day. Meditation is how we go about every action we take as spirit. We don't exist in this world on a monetary scheme. We exist in a world of nature, to embody nature, not only our embedded nature, but the nature we find out here we are supposed to support and make one with. That is the way. That is the way. I'm going to finish, but before I do, I want to move to our meditative closing prayer and what that means. But before I do, I'd like to ask, is there any questions or comments that anyone might have? And whether you appreciated my comments.
Yes. Very much. Thank you.
Okay. If not, that's fine. The journey is not to be made only by ourselves. Ultimately, it is, in a way, it's a paradox. Our entire lives will live in a paradox. Something I learned in doing the I Ching from the very beginning. It's like we have this world of spirit that's out here that we are supposed to aspire to. And the paradox is the world we live here without knowing that. And we go about our everyday, what we do, what we work, our relationships we have, and it doesn't match that. So the paradox we all find ourselves in is we are here with a message from the universe as spirit telling us these are things you need to learn while you're here. These are the experiences you need to have while you're here that are to serve as teachers. Through the entire time we are here, we are students, teachers, students, teachers, students, teachers, students, teachers. All the way through. We learn and we do. Then when we know something about what that means from spirit, we go back to learn and we do. And it's a continuation. We live as a continuum of spirit. That universal thing that the shamans told us when we were little kids sitting around the campfire thousands of years ago and told us what spirit meant. And that's who we are, and that's who you will always be in eternity. that spirit. It's always been there. When what we learn now about all the things in the universe, we learn all the time. And we hear about the cosmos and how new universe galaxies are created all the time. It's a continuation. It's not standstill. It's a continuum. Our lives are to reflect that. We are a continuum. So the handout that I gave today that started with the epilogue and that goes back into verses 81 and 80 are to be the way of showing us, okay, what is my next step? What is it I need to do to learn who I am? And once I know that, what am I to do about it? As the living spirit. That's how we should see ourselves. Only as embodying what that means as living spirit. So I'm going to do something a little different. I know generally speaking, because I don't want to lose the focus, we generally get together in a circle around the back. But I want to make sure and to say what I have written down as the closing prayer. And then after that, we will give the messages and continue from there. But I think the closing prayer is important from the standpoint because it takes us there. It helps us to each one of us to see, okay, I think I've heard a message here. Now, how am I going to live this? How am I going to see the virtue I have always possessed that I am here to transmit to become a better focus of who I am supposed to be? So, whatever you would normally do in meditation, whether that's, getting still, closing your eyes, however you best feel to connect with spirit. And this particular meditation is aligned to unity. And also aligned with what I've said today. So, spirit of the living way. We give thanks for the stillness that gathers when we release our grip. We give thanks for the clarity that rises when nothing is forced, for the freedom that appears when nothing is grasped, for the wholeness that returns when nothing is withheld. May we walk gently with the Tao this week. May we notice when we tighten and when we soften, when we resist and release, when we forget and remember. May we live from the quiet center where spirit leads and life unfolds without effort. May simplicity guide our choices. May sincerity guide our words. May compassion guide our steps. And may we remain in high style, not by striving, but by staying aligned with the way that moves through all things. For this moment of clarity, for this breath, for this path, we give thanks. And so it is. Amen. Thank you. Namaste. Thank you for listening today. Okay.
You need the announcement.
I need, can someone read the announcements for me? Oh, you want me to read? Okay, I can do that. Okay, the program is complete, but there are certain things we want you to know about Unity. We want you to know who we are. We want you to, if you haven't yet, to go on our Unity Facebook page and follow us. So you can follow the things we do. We're getting ready for Planet Unity, which is the biggest event we have every year that hopefully you will participate in. But we first want to bless the offerings, which I know the ushers have already gone through. And I want to read some of the announcements. Everyone is welcome to attend the next Prosperity and Growth Team meeting tomorrow, March 16th at 6 p.m. This team focuses on strategic financial planning and initiatives aimed at enhancing the financial well-being and long-term prosperity of Unity in Springfield. This is important. Unity has a message that we hopefully not only you will be a part of, but you will want to support. The next Unity Real Estate Forum is this Tuesday, March 17th at 6 p.m. We'll hear from the member appraisal, Steve Kittle, who brings over 20 years of experience. Discover the challenges appraisals bring and what to do if an appraisal falls short. Next Sunday, for our celebration service, we are pleased to welcome John Bratcher as our guest speaker. John has been a dedicated member of our spiritual community for more than 10 years and has faithfully served in many ways. He facilitates the Navigating Grief Support Group and regularly leads adult education classes. I'm hoping you will participate. John has been a dear friend of mine for many years. He has a great message and a great message. I hope you will want to hear it. Join us next Sunday at 9:15 for our New Thought Adult Education class, Returning to Love in Troubled Times, with Mary Hildebeth Huber. You can join in person or watch live on our Facebook page. Everyone is invited to join John Rush this evening and every Sunday evening at 6 p.m. for meditation. This is a perfect opportunity to pause, breathe, and find some peace together. All are welcome. Just 2 more weeks until Reverend Diane Kennedy will be here to do her workshop. Soul Revolution, Claim Your Vision. This workshop will offer a sacred space to gain clarity, reconnect with your soul's wisdom, and boldly claim the vision you are ready to live, which we already know, but we should expand on. You can sign up at the connection table. Please join us on April 4th for our spring yard cleanup. Whether you can give an hour or the whole day, your help makes a big difference in getting our grounds refreshed and ready for the season ahead. Bring your gloves and yard tools. The youth department is planning an egg hunt for our kids on Easter Sunday, April 5th, right after the service. They are asking for donations of individually wrapped candy to help fill the eggs. If you would like to contribute, please bring your candy donations to the church before Easter Sunday. Our annual spring yard sale is a month away, and we are currently accepting donations. Yard sale setup will begin on April 5th, right after the service. It takes a lot of volunteers to get ready for this sale. You can sign up to help at the connection table. Planet Unity, which is coming up. We will need cookies and brownies donated for the plant sale. Silent auction items, raffle items, and volunteer sign up. Planet Unity t-shirt sign up at the connection table. Last day to order is March 25th, 29th. Please stand. Okay, we did that. Okay. Let me finish by saying the light of God surrounds us. The love of God enfolds us. The power of God protects us. The presence of God watches over us. Wherever we are, God is, and all is well. And I would just like to close that what I just read as the announcement is the perfect segue or finish to what I said today. It really is. Because it shows how we can expand that spirit that we possess as our next step in the world we choose to live. And with that, I say, namaste and amen. Thank you.